Hello and welcome to my show Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and this recipe basically originates from the Bohri community. In Pakistan, we have a lot of communities such as the Sindhi community, Bohri community, the Punjabis, the Memons, the people from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa known as Pathans, the Balochi. We are a mixture of different communities, different tribes, and we fall under one nation which is called Pakistan. This recipe comes from the Bohri society and it's called the Bohri Naashta. It's a very interesting recipe, and if you will see this recipe, you might even think that this recipe is very similar to the recipe which is made in Turkey known as Turkish shakshuka or the shakshuka eggs. Now this recipe has very easy ingredients. We'll be using 6 eggs and around half a kilogram of beef mince. Now the beef mince and the eggs are in the fridge. Why? Because it's a little hot and windy today in Islamabad, so I've kept them on the side carefully. Apart from that, what are the ingredients for today's recipe? They're very easy, very easily available in the market. You need around 4 tomatoes, 2 onions and some coriander which needs to be super fresh. Then you need around half a cup of oil. You will be requiring some green chilies, some cumin seeds, salt to taste, pepper, ginger, garlic and some red chili powder with some coriander powder. These are all the ingredients for today, and how will we cook this recipe I shall tell you. But before that, what do we need? So now you need 2 onions which I'll keep over here. Now you have to remember one thing, that the onions need to be super finely sliced. What we shall do is first we shall take the root out and keep it on the side. Why? Because the root holds the onion together, and when the onion will be held together, it won't fall apart when you're slicing it properly. Just cut from between and slice it super thin. Keep it as close as you can, remember that. Turn around and it is done. Now just keep it super close like this, and that's about it. So now the other onion, or the second onion, will also be finely chopped. And why am I doing this? Because whenever you're making this recipe, and if you have the onions lightly browned with the beef mince, it will give a very nice distinct flavor to the recipe, and the texture will be perfect. Throw the roots in the dustbin, and now what I'll do is I'll just bring a pan. This recipe will be made in a single pan, and we shall bring it to heat. First of all, you'll add half a cup of oil and transfer all the onions into the pan. So once you're done with the onions, you have to remember you have to make them light brown. Why? As I told you before, that the onions, when they are cooked towards a point, when they get light brown, and when they cook with the beef mince, it gives a very distinct flavor. Apart from this, this recipe is a one-pot recipe. Now one pot doesn't mean that you have to use a pot for that, but it means that you will be cooking the whole recipe in one go, in one piece of cookware. Now this recipe is very similar to the Turkish shakshuka eggs, also known as Turkish menemen, but this recipe is also a Bohri speciality which basically dates back to a lot of years ago. Why? Because now even this recipe is used or taken for breakfast when a family comes and sits together. Now what I'll do is I'll add some salt, let's say around half a teaspoon, spread out. Now this will help the onions to get quickly brown. And apart from that, it will also make the onions sweat properly. So I'll just take a spatula, spread this out, and firstly we shall give the onions a lid. Shake it up. Now put the lid on and let it cook. Now what will happen is when you give the lid, the onions will get a proper heating environment. Apart from that, what will happen is that it will also act like an oven, and they will get soft to the core. Once you take it out, they're soft, they're cooked, then we shall cook them to the point they get nicely translucent. Okay, now on the other hand, what do we need? We need some garlic. We'll be taking around 5 cloves of garlic, and these cloves are not small cloves, these are big cloves. Just smash them like this. Remember, whenever you're smashing it, your handle needs to be away from the counter. Why? Because you don't want to break the blade of your knife. Once this is done, bring it close and chop this super fine. Now you might be thinking that why am I chopping it fine? It's because so that the garlic is dispersed properly in the beef mince, which will result in the beef mince being properly cooked with a proper aroma that comes from fresh garlic. Now this recipe needs fresh garlic. Try avoiding garlic powder or any other form of dried garlic. Why? Because you won't get the perfect result. Now what I'll do is I shall add the garlic over here and let it cook with the onions until the onions are lightly brown. So what I'll do is I'll mix it up and just flatten it out again so that the garlic infuses with the onions. Now keep the heat super high. So till the time this is cooking, what we'll do is we shall get ready with the tomatoes. I need around 2 tomatoes now and 2 tomatoes later. Now you might be thinking, why is that? So what we shall do is we shall use the tomatoes as a paste, and we shall also use the tomatoes apart from the paste. Now whenever you're putting the paste goes later. So what I'll do is I'll cut it into 2 halves. It's in front of you over here. And then we shall finely slice the tomatoes. Once the tomatoes are done finely sliced, they shall be added into the pan so that it gives a nice texture. Now I shall just pass the knife once more like this, and this will give the tomatoes a very nice finely chopped look. Now you might be thinking that the finely chopped look, when we talk about it, otherwise looks very different. The reason is that tomatoes is a vegetable, or you could also say a fruit, which basically collapses or which disintegrates very quickly in terms of a texture. So what happens is when you cut it like this and when it cooks, it basically vanishes in the food and you won't feel the texture otherwise, because we will cook it to a point that it gets super fine. Keep your knife super sharp. If it's super sharp, then only you'll get the best result possible. Take this part of the tomato and throw it in the bin because you do not need it anymore, and just shake it up. As you can see that the outer edges of the garlic are frying because the garlic fries quicker than the onions. Now what I'll do is I shall just transfer these tomatoes into the pan over here so that they cook properly. I shall just pick up my knife and slowly and gradually get busy with it. And this is done. Now what do we have to do? We have to mix it up once more and let it cook till the time the tomatoes get super soft. Let's pick it up and give it a lid. Now we have to cook this for at least 7 to 8 minutes. So what I'll do is I'll just take a little bit of salt, you could say a quarter teaspoon, and shake it up. That's it. Now give it a lid and let it cook for at least 5 to 6 minutes. Until then, this is cooking, what we shall do is we shall go for a short break, and once we're back, I'll let you know what to do. There's a lot to do right now, but we need a break. Why? Because till the time the tomatoes don't go down, you cannot add the beef mince. So we'll go for a short break, and once we're back, I'll let you know what to do. Remember one thing, the beef will just not go directly over here. There's another twist to it. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. I just took a break, and during that break I just waited for you. The only thing I did was I let this cook and I just changed it around. As you can see, the tomatoes are collapsing. Let it cook. Do not mix it too much. Just mix it once like this. Spread out again, and as you can see, they're frying right now. This is the texture I want for this recipe. Remember that. Now what I shall do is, as you can see over here, we have some beef mince. I shall bring the food processor over here in front of you first. I'll pick up the 2 remaining tomatoes, which are basically a little too far away. Now we do not need these baskets. These baskets will go at the back, and we shall just cut the tomatoes in front of you and add them to the processor. Now what are we doing? We're basically getting ready with the beef mince. We shall process the beef mince to a super fine texture and then use it. Why? Because once it is super fine, it will give a very nice flavor, a texture, and it will also be perfect for this recipe. You must remember that. Now what do we have to do after putting the tomatoes? You need to add around a teaspoon of black peppercorn in it, and we shall just add around half a cup of water. That's about it. Why? Because tomato is like filled with water content and you do not need too much of water to process it. Let the tomatoes cook over here slowly and gradually. Pick this up, place it over here and process it into a super fine paste. Keep your eye over here, let that process, and as you can see the texture is completely changing. Now we shall bring it together and start pressing it down. We need the perfect flavor and texture coming out of these tomatoes, so cook them till the time the moisture completely evaporates. This is done. Now mix it up once more. Keep it on the side and mash it. This is done. Spread out again like this, flatten it out. So now we have fried tomatoes, we have a tomato paste, and switch it off. Bring it over here. Take a spatula, pick up the beef mince and transfer it into the food processor. After this, I shall wash the spatula and then I shall use it. Why? Because we need to avoid cross-contamination. This is done. Now what I shall do is take this at the back and process this into a super fine paste also. So now if you keep your eyes closed over here, the beef is completely super fine. I'll show it to you. It's just like a paste. Now what I shall do is I shall wash my hands, clean my set and then let you know what to do next. So as you can see, everything is done. Now what I shall do is I shall just take the lid off. First what I'll do is I'll take some ginger. We will slice it. And once that's done, we will cut it into threads, also known as julienne in the culinary world. Keep it together like this. What will happen is you can cut it quicker and in a much efficient way. Pass your knife super close. Keep it paper thin. And once this is done, turn it around like this and finely chop it. Now you have the perfectly chopped ginger, which shall go in the food over here. We shall transfer all of this. Will you not add any salt for now? Just mix it up. Flip it. And now pick this up. You can see that the beef is just like a pudding. Transfer it over here and keep the remaining on this side. Now as you can see, it's over here and the spices are on the other side. We will just start folding it. And as I told you, there's some oil remaining. We shall add it on the top. Now this recipe is a very luxurious recipe. Slowly and gradually mix the oil in the beef and the beef will start falling apart. This needs to be done on high heat, remember that. This recipe is all about technique. And this is done. All the spices have gone in. Now we take the recipe towards the end. What I shall do is I shall add some red chili powder. Keep this on the side, some coriander powder. And some cumin, which needs to be fresh and not ground. Whatever you've used, pick it up, keep it on the side. Why? Because you need to keep your station super clean. Apart from that, what I'll do is I shall take around 3 pieces of green chili. But first, I shall mix this. Add around half a teaspoon of salt. spread it out, remember that. And now keep whatever's done over here. Mix it around properly. And now it's time to flip. So just take a piece of cloth if the pan is super hot and start mixing. This is done. Now what I shall do is I shall just spread it out and give it a lid and cook it on high heat for 5 minutes. So till I'm just cooking, what we shall do is we shall take some green chilies, which is a very integral part of this recipe. Keep your counter super clean, and finally slice it. Always remember that the spice content or the spice level is not in the skin of the chili, it's in the seeds of the chili. So if you take the seeds out, you de-seed it, you will not feel the spice content on your tongue. Now just add the green chilies in. Mix it up again, because green chilies gives it a very nice flavor. You must remember that. Place a lid on top. Give it another 5 minutes. Whatever's left goes on the side. And now what do we need? We need a little bit of fresh coriander. Pick it up. Now you need the roots also. Turn it around like a cigar. And finally chop it. This is done. Clean the blade, take the lid off again, and add the coriander in. Scoop it up, transfer it in, and start mixing it. Now till then this cooks, we shall clean up, and then I shall show you what should be done with the eggs. We should give it 5 minutes at least, and then I'll let you know what comes up next. Now as you can see, the recipe is almost done, but now I have cooked for at least 7 to 8 people. What I'll do is I shall make a small serving. I'm doing this so that you also get a chance to know how you can do it in different portions. Now what I'll do is I'll bring a small frying pan. I shall shift this one over here. And what we shall do is we shall just transfer a little bit of the meat over here. So just take around four ladles full, spread it out like this. Now this will be served in the frying pan itself. This is how this recipe is basically cooked. Properly spread it out. Keep the heat super high, mix this up, and just give it a lid again. Why? Because I want this to stay super hot also. Now as you can see, it's come to heat. Now what we shall do is we shall bring the eggs. Now you can see that I've put the eggs in water. Why? Because I washed them and then I added them in some water. The reason behind that is that you need the eggs to be super clean. So what I'll do is I shall just pick up the eggs and break them over here. Now I'm keeping the shells in the other hand. Why? Because then I shall dispose them off super easily. Make sure that the yolk of the egg needs to be intact. Try saving it and do not break it much. This is done. At times the yolk comes out broken. The reason behind that is when you're in a hot city or a hot country, the egg gets very runny. So always keep them in a fridge and then use them. Now this is done. I'll keep it over here. Give it a lid and now cook this for at least 2 to 3 minutes on high heat. So till the time this is cooking, what we'll do is we'll clean up and then I'll show you the final look of the recipe. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. So as you can see, today's recipe is ready. I have served it with some bread, some fresh coriander on the side. There's beef mince and the egg. What usually people do is people just cut this out, and as you can see, the egg or the yolk needs to be super runny. I hope you liked today's episode. I'll see you in another episode of Indus Cuisine. Take care of yourself, lovely people. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.